Welcome to the session on writing haiku. It's part of the Yarra Ranges Council Still Life project, an arts response to COVID-19. My name is Leah Hills and I'm a writer living and working in the Yarra Ranges. During challenging times, we so often turn to the arts to help us make sense of the world. I'm sure many of you have over these last months, including online concerts, virtual galleries, books, films, and TV shows. It's also been a good time to try new creative activities. Today, I'll be guiding you on how to write haiku about your experiences in lockdown and the pandemic in general. At the end of this video, there will be information about how to submit your haiku so they can be displayed as part of the project. Given the theme of still life, haiku is the perfect form of poetry. It captures moments in time, moments of stillness and fleeting observations. Haiku is a Japanese form of poetry made up of 3 lines. Traditionally, each of those lines had a specific number of syllables, 5 in the first line, 7 in the second line, and 5 in the third line. Today, most haiku writers tend to focus on the 3 lines rather than the number of syllables. I'm going to guide you through the writing of your own haiku, capturing your experiences during a period when we've often been physically isolated from others, but connected to the world in new ways. It's been a time when we've slowed down and become more observant and thoughtful. And the idea of this project is to capture that forever in words. So let's begin. If you don't already have a pen and paper or something to type on, now is the time to pause and go and get it, so you're ready to write. We need some raw material to work with, and it will help if you close your eyes for this bit. Picture a place you'd like to go to during this time. Maybe it's a park where you go walking, or somewhere in your backyard, or a favourite spot in your house. Imagine this place in all its detail. The colours, the sounds, smells and textures. What was above you or at your feet? When we're remembering a specific moment, maybe there were other people there or animals, or there was something about the weather that you noticed. Seasons are often an important part of haiku. Now picture a game you've liked to play during this time, a new book you've discovered, an activity you've done with the people you live with or by yourself, one that you'd never done before and might never have done without this unique period in history. Maybe you notice something for the first time, even though you've often walked past that place before. Again, picture this thing in all its detail. Think about what's special about it and why you may want to write about it, why it reminds you of this time. Another idea is to think about how your experience might be different to people living in other places. If your eyes are closed, you can open them now. It might help to take a few minutes to write down some of the things you saw, so you have a starting point when it comes to writing your haiku. Again, you can pause the video if you want to take more time. There are a number of ways in which you can approach writing haiku. We are going to look at 3 techniques. First, we'll start with the easiest, the what, when, where technique. With this technique, one line talks about what, one line talks about when, and one line talks about where. It's up to you in which order you put them. Here's an example of a haiku I wrote about one of my experiences during this time, which uses this technique. My family's faces projected on the white wall. Dad's birthday on Zoom. They are simple images, faces, a white wall, a birthday. But this is an experience that many will have had in one form or another. During this time we've had to mark events in new ways, while still connecting us to the people who are important to us. As you can see, there are different ways to describe when something is happening. You can name a time of day, for example, Monday morning, sunset, or dawn. You can include the season or a combination of these, such as autumn sunset. It can be an important event, like my dad's birthday in this haiku, or an action that takes place at a particular time, such as breakfast. The where might be a specific place. For example, the name of a national park where you've been walking, or your lounge room, or in the branches of a tree. The what could be an object or a person, a plant or animal, a song or something you saw online. Have a go with one of the images you wrote down and see if you can organize it into this pattern of what, when, where. When you do this, think about how this simple image might have other meanings. This is the art of haiku. It looks simple but can carry lots of hidden meaning for you and for those who read them. Stick to the 3 lines and keep each one of them short. Poetry is about getting as much meaning as we can out of few words. When you've written it, read it out loud to see how it sounds. Haiku isn't meant to rhyme, like some forms of poetry, but when you read it aloud, you will know if it sounds right, or if it needs a word added in or a word taken out. If you're not sure, try it on someone else. Here's another example. By the calendar, one more COVID-safe sticker. My husband returns from work. Haiku can also use humour, from the silly to the ridiculous to the laugh out loud. Have a go at finding images that can work in this way. These kinds of haiku prove that even in challenging times, especially in challenging times, laughter is a powerful force. Here's an example using this technique. After the shops have closed, back of the cupboard, our last toilet roll. The next one we're going to try is called the zoom in technique. With this technique, it's like watching a movie when the camera zooms in closer and closer to the thing that is the focus of the shot. A classic example is moving from looking at a city to closing in on a building, then a person standing beside a window. For this technique, you will need to decide what your focus is. This is the thing you will zoom in on. It might be an object that's been important during this time, maybe an activity or something you noticed about a place. By focusing on it, you're saying it is important. This can be particularly interesting when it's something we usually ignore. Here's an example. Sherbrooke Forest, lying on a bench, a child's blue sock. With this haiku, we begin with a large landscape and slowly move closer to the thing that is our focus, a single blue sock. By starting with something big, then zooming in on something small and left behind, we are reminded that the pandemic affects all of us, but that sometimes we can feel alone in this. Of course, there are other ways to read this poem. It depends on you. Each word becomes important because there are so few. By naming a place that some people will recognize, it also gives a sense of connection to what we are seeing in the haiku. It feels more personal. Here's another example. On a sunlit field, a mob of roos feed from the same patch of grass. Another way you can use this technique is by reversing it and zooming out. Have a go at this and see the different effect that it has. By zooming out, it reminds us how small we are in the world, but in a way that still feels connected to it. You can take the same lines and reverse them for a different effect. A child's blue sock, lying on a bench, Sherbrooke Forest. Here are two more examples, one zoom in and one zoom out. At the supermarket, I wait on a cross, my shoelace undone. From a rock above Birdsland, the city is the width of my finger. This last one is a little tricky because it zooms back in at the last minute. These techniques are only a guide. You can play with them as much as you like. Just remember to keep the lines short. The last technique we are going to try I call opposites and parallels. With this technique, you put two images side by side but still keep to the three lines. By putting two images together, you are asking the reader or the listener, what are the similarities and differences between these two things? These images might be close to each other, even occurring in the same place, or they might seem almost completely unrelated at first. Here's an example. Masked nurses dance on TV news. Our lounge room fills with light. Here there are two different images. One of nurses dancing on TV, the other of a lounge room filling with light. But they are connected in many ways. This small poem draws together the real world and the electronic one, the outside and the inside, and the paradox of feeling deeply connected to strangers. The word light is also important because it has two meanings here. Here's another example. Cooking sourdough again. The sign on my favourite cafe still says closed. Here the images happen in two different places but have a common idea, one that's been important to a lot of us during this time: food. One more example. Wearing the same t-shirt, fourth day in a row. Our maple sheds its leaves. This haiku uses some of the traditional elements of Japanese haiku, the maple tree and seasons. At the same time, it brings together two images from the experience of being in isolation and asks us to think about how they might be linked. So here's a reminder of the three techniques we've just looked at together, along with examples. After the shops have closed, back of the cupboard, our last toilet roll. Sherbrooke Forest, lying on a bench, a child's blue sock. From a rock above Birdsland, the city is the width of my finger. Masked nurses dance on TV news. Our lounge room fills with light. You can download the accompanying worksheets on the Yarra Ranges Council website. They include examples and explanations along with information about where you can submit your haiku. Submission deadlines are also outlined on the website. Thanks for joining me today, and all the best with writing your haiku. I look forward to reading them and seeing what insights you've had into this unique period in history. In the meantime, stay safe.